Who doesn't love a good trade tree video? I don't. Well, then why'd you click it? Hi, Steve Dangle here with another trade tree video and another kind of one-sided one. And I don't mean one-sided like one team did good, one team did bad. I think both teams did pretty well. One team probably did a lot better than the other, but I'm gonna justify the trade, darn it. Montreal Canadiens fans, you're gonna know right away what this trade tree is because the deal is with the New York Rangers. If you read the title, it's cheating. Let's take a look at the trade tree for what at the time was the Scott Gomez trade, but what has become the Ryan McDonagh trade. Let's take a look at Okay. You see why I called it one-sided? I'm going to justify this trade from a Montreal Canadiens perspective, but the Rangers made off with a lot of assets in this deal, and a lot of them are pretty good, and they're still paying off. So let's talk about it. So right away, the Montreal Canadiens give up Pavel Valentenko, Doug Janik, Chris Higgins, and Ryan McDonagh. Now, why would they go and do a thing like that? Well, it was for a very silly reason that a lot of people kind of forget about and underappreciate, which is they wanted to win! This is what I try to do with trade trees, right? It would be very easy to go back and look at certain trades with absolutely no hindsight and go, wow, those suck. See this deal where this team got good player and this team got bad player? Stupid. But no, not everything is as simple as Rask for Raycroft. I scratched my head when I smacked my hand. Jeez, I got a blogging injury. That's a dang it. So anyway, Montreal was trying to win. And what do you need to win? Good players! And in 2009, Scott Gomez was a good player. He was your prototypical playmaker. He had a scoring touch, he had one 33-goal season, but he never topped 20 any other point in his career. But he topped 50 assists though, 3 times. His final 3 seasons in New Jersey, 70 points, 84 points, and 60 points, but he missed 12 games that season, so his point-a-game totals are still really good. So one day, the New York Rangers, who are divisional rivals of the New Jersey Devils, said, hey, Scott Gomez, would you like $51 million? And he said yes. $7.3 million against the cap for 7 years, which might not make you cringe so much now, but in 2009, that was a lot of money. I know I'm talking about 2009 like it was the 1800s, but you gotta understand, with salary cap inflation, it's a little different. When he signed the deal, was 14.63% of the cap. Shout out Cap Friendly for that stat. I would have never figured that out myself. But he played just 2 seasons in New York. 2 pretty good seasons, 70 points in 58. And then he was traded to the Montreal Canadiens because he's a good player and they wanted to win. And what I find often gets left out in the Scott Gomez chapter of Montreal Canadiens history is they almost did. Some of you might remember the 2010 playoffs as the Yaroslav Halak coming out party. If you don't remember it, you don't understand. People were talking about trading Carey Price because Yaroslav Halak was so good. They put Halak on stop signs in Quebec. Or they photoshopped it really convincingly. I don't know. I didn't drive there to check. But it was pandemonium. Halak mania. And they beat Alex Ovechkin's Washington Capitals. They beat Sidney Crosby's Pittsburgh Penguins, the reigning Stanley Cup champions at the time, Pittsburgh Penguins. And people are going, oh my goodness, they're in the Final Four. They can do this. And during that 3-round run, Scott Gomez only put up 2 goals in 19 games. That's not very good. But you know what is? 14 points. Playmakers get no love. But because they don't win, failure. You know what trade kind of sucked? Thomas Kaberle going from Toronto to Boston. The Bruins gave up a first, a former first, and a second. Thomas Kaberle was the only Bruin on the entire roster, except for the backup goalie, who didn't play in at least 10 minutes of Game 7 against Vancouver in the Stanley Cup Final in 2011. And none of that matters because the Bruins won the Cup that year. You think anyone in Boston views that trade as bad? If Scott Gomez and Yaroslav Halak lead the Montreal Canadiens to a Stanley Cup in 2010, we're not talking about this trade. Well, actually, we would be, just in reverse. Oh, and of course, there were 2 other parts of that trade from Montreal. Tom Pyatt was a young role player for that team, and Michael Busto never made the NHL. The highest level he played was ECHL or the Italian League, depends who you ask. But the last ECHL team he played for was the Las Vegas Wranglers, so Michael Busto played in Vegas before it was cool. Also, Las Vegas in the East Coast League? What, they don't call it the East Coast League anymore? They just call it the ECHL? No one asked what it stands for? Sure. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Can we just change the name of trade trees to ECHL since it doesn't mean anything? Gonna have a kid and name it ECHL. What does your name mean? Nothing. Anyway, after the close but no cigar playoff run of 2010, the Montreal Canadiens go into 2011. They have a 2-0 lead on the Boston Bruins, and I already spoiled that one. The Boston Bruins end up winning that series, Game 7, in overtime and go on to win the Stanley Cup, but the Montreal Canadiens pushed the eventual Stanley Cup champions right to the brink. I'm not doing that to turn the knife. I'm doing that to talk about how good that Montreal Canadiens team was back then. And also, fun fact, that Game 7 OT winner was the last Game 7 OT winner ever scored by the Bruins in TD Garden. Stop, don't Google that, don't. Gomez's stats tanked, which is tough because he makes a lot of money, and some people started to resent that. But the point of the whole deal was to win. They came close, and nothing is guaranteed in pro sports. Now, what did the Rangers get? Pavel Valentenko was a 5th-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens. He played a couple seasons with the Rangers minor league affiliate, but he never made it to the NHL, instead deciding to go to the KHL to play out the rest of his pro career. Doug Janik, another part of that trade, did play in 190 NHL games, but none of them were for the New York Rangers. So far, out of the 4 players that the Rangers got in the Scott Gomez deal, none of them have played in the NHL. Hey, Montreal, you're looking good so far. And then it goes south. Chris Higgins was the Habs' 14th overall pick in 2002, and he was a really good player, I thought. Really underrated. 84 goals, 151 points in 282 games as a member of the Montreal Canadiens. And maybe the most important part for the purposes of the Montreal Canadiens at the time, Higgins had 11 points in 22 playoff games as a Montreal Canadien. And then he goes to the New York Rangers and struggles. Big time. 6 goals, 8 assists, 14 points in 55 games. And the Rangers trade. The trade was Chris Higgins along with Ales Kotelik to the Calgary Flames in exchange for Olli Jokinen and Brandon Prust. And Olli Jokinen was only a Ranger for a hot minute. Brandon Prust put up almost 400 penalty minutes with them in 3 seasons, but eventually ended up on the Habs anyway. You know, I gotta say, so far, the Habs won the trade. They did very well. Often in these trade tree videos we see, oh, such and such team gave up a pick, and they shouldn't have done that because look who that pick turned into. There was no mystery box here. The Montreal Canadiens knew they were giving up 12th overall pick Ryan McDonagh. To date, Ryan McDonagh has played in 662 regular season NHL games, which ranks 5th among defenders from the 2007 NHL draft class. Ironically, as it pertains to this trade, this guy, PK Subban, is one of the 4 defenders who's above him in that category. 516 of those games were with the New York Rangers alone. And remember how I said the Montreal Canadiens got Scott Gomez to win? After long enough, the New York Rangers had Ryan McDonagh to win. As a member of the New York Rangers, Ryan McDonagh played in 96 playoff games, over a full season's worth of playoff games, which included a masterful 17-point-25 game performance in 2014 as the New York Rangers went all the way to the Stanley Cup Final to take on the LA Kings, and the LA Kings won. You can come close, so very close, and still not make it, seems to be the theme, doesn't it? After 7 seasons with the Blue Shirts, the Rangers, on their way down, retooling, decide to deal Ryan McDonagh to the Tampa Bay Lightning in a huge deal. This one's recent, so you might remember it, although you might not remember all 5 parts the Rangers got in return. The Rangers sent Ryan McDonagh and JT Miller to the Tampa Bay Lightning for Vlad Nemestikov, Brett Howden, Libor Hayek, a first-round pick in 2018 who turned into Niels Lundqvist, how appropriate, and a second-rounder in 2019, Carl Henriksen. And it actually expands a bit. Vladislav Nemestikov was flipped to Ottawa for Nick Ebert and a 4th-round pick in 2021. So giving up Ryan McDonagh and JT Miller is a lot. Ryan McDonagh is a fantastic defender, and as Canucks fans will tell you, JT Miller is an amazing forward. But if you're rebuilding, what the heck are you holding on to them for? Assets, assets, assets. And that's what they did with this deal. Nemestikov played 99 games with the Rangers, ended up getting flipped for Ebert in a 4th, essentially a 4th in 2021. Brett Howden is a former first-round pick, the 27th overall pick from 2016. He's played in 2 seasons with the Rangers, not a ton of points, only 42, but 136 games, and this guy's only 22 years old. 22. My voice, this is, how far into the video are we? Libor Hayek, another part of this deal, was a another Tampa Bay draft pick from 2016, 37th overall in the second round. He's sort of gone up and down from the NHL to the AHL, but again, this is a young player who's in the show. And just like Howden, still only 22 years old. So knowing where Howden and Hayek were picked, and knowing that Nemestikov was essentially a fourth rounder, the trade is a fourth rounder, 2 firsts, and 2 seconds. That is how you rebuild a team, sirs and madams. Before we wrap this up, I've been on this train for a long time. I love what the Rangers are doing with their rebuild. I really do. A few years ago, they could have easily made it into the playoffs. They were in a playoff spot when they pulled the chute, but they decided to stop fooling themselves and stop fooling their fan base and pull the chute. They were honest. Look, we're going to make some trades, they're going to be difficult, and we're going to get better. And this trade gets better. Nils Lundqvist, besides his name, it's a little too perfect, was the 28th overall pick in 2018. This past season, still at just 19 years old, Lundqvist put up 11 goals, 20 assists for 31 points in 45 games with Luleå in Sweden, and was second on his team in scoring. As a defenseman at 19, it's stupid, it's crazy. And last but not least, Carl Henriksson, a second round pick from 2018. He doesn't have the numbers of Lundqvist, but again, he's playing in the top tier league in Sweden, and he's 19. The guy was born in 2001! What? And you might be watching this right now and going, what's the big deal? I'm younger than that. What? But more mind-blowing than any of that is how the New York Rangers did in this trade tree. They used their financial might to get Scott Gomez on free agency. And a couple seasons later, they trade him and they get 4 assets for him and they whiff on 3. But the one they didn't, they got over 500 games out of, including a Stanley Cup final performance. Then they packaged that guy with JT Miller and used him to get 2 seasons of Vladislav Nemestikov, a 4th round pick, 2 seconds, and 2 firsts. That's tidy work. So, what do you think? Leave a comment in the comment box down below. How'd this deal shake out? Do you blame the Montreal Canadiens for making this deal at the time? So that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you liked this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends to go for it. Just, don't give up Ryan McDonagh when you do it.